Hey, welcome back to the Growing Leaders Podcast. I'm Jeff Garrison, and today I want to tell you a story. It's a story about a word, one word, and how changing that word, just that one word, rippled through a business in ways the team didn't fully see coming. After the intro, we'll get into it.
Welcome to the Growing Leaders Podcast, powered by Results on Purpose. If you're a small or mid-sized business owner or part of a leadership team, this podcast is built for you. We share ideas and stories to help you grow into the leader your business needs.
Now, I want to be upfront about something before we get into it. This is a simple, clean, and straightforward example of strategic evolution. In reality, most of the work that happens around strategic theory is messier than this. It's harder to see, harder to name, and harder to get alignment on. I chose this example precisely because of its simplicity, because sometimes a clean example is the best way to illustrate a principle that in your own business might be a lot more complex to work through. If you're familiar with the 4 stages of growth framework that we use here at Results on Purpose, you know that every stage of the business growth has its own set of challenges, and some of the most important moments in a company's life happen not when they solve a big operational problem, but when they finally get honest about who they are, who they serve, and what they're actually building. That's what happened in this story. I was in a quarterly planning session recently with a leadership team I've been working with for a while. They're a professional services firm, and they're a great group of people, smart, committed, growing, and like a lot of businesses in that stage 2 to stage 3 transition, they've been doing the work, building systems, clarifying roles, getting more intentional about strategy. One of the things we do in our planning sessions is review what we call the results map, a living strategic document that covers everything from mission and mindset to long-term goals, annual priorities, and quarterly deliverables. It's a comprehensive picture of where a company is and where it's headed. And tucked inside that results map is this strategic theory, which answers the question, how will we win in the market? We were working through the results map when we landed on their strategic theory, and sitting right there in it was a phrase they'd been carrying for a few years. We will win in our market by providing customized care at an affordable cost. Now, I want you to sit with that for a second, because on the surface, that sounds fine, right? Customized care at an affordable cost. It tells the customer what they're getting, personalized service, and it signals something about the price. Accessible, not intimidating. We won't break the bank. And for where this company was, that phrase made sense. In the early days, being affordable was part of how they got a foothold. It's how you get your first clients when you're new, when you're building, when you don't have the reputation yet to charge a premium, if that's where you're headed. In the first stage, the tactical stage, the strategic theory is usually more of a reflection of where things are while the company is getting better at operating. In stage 2, there is more time for strategic thinking and the development of those skills. Thus, the strategic theory evolves. Without tweaking, and sometimes overhauling, the very language you use to get here can become the cage that keeps you from getting there. So we're in this session, and we land on that line in the strategic theory, customized care at an affordable cost. And one of the leaders on this team, the person who owns sales and business development, pauses and says something like, I'm starting to think affordable cost doesn't need to be in there. I think we should say competitive. Now, if you heard that in a meeting, you might think, that's a small thing. It's a synonym. What's the difference? But the difference can be enormous. Here's what affordable signals to your team, to your prospects, to your existing clients, and honestly, to yourself. Affordable says, we adjust our price for you. We will bend. We will work with you. If you push back, there's probably room. Affordable says, we compete on price. Affordable says, we'll take almost anyone who needs what we do because we can find a way to make it work. Now, here's what competitive signals. Competitive says we're priced fairly relative to the market. We've done our homework. We know what good service costs, and we charge accordingly. Competitive says we're not the cheapest option, and we're not trying to be. Competitive says we win on value, on the quality of what we deliver, not on being the lowest number in a proposal. Same service, same team, same commitment to their clients. Those two words completely change the perspective in some important behaviors in the company. And again, I want to acknowledge that this is a clean, almost elegant example of strategic evolution. One word, clear implications. The team saw it quickly and got to alignment without a lot of friction. In fact, they were already behaving in many ways as if they'd already made that decision long ago. And this isn't always how it goes. Sometimes the shift in strategic theory is harder to see. It's harder to articulate, and it can take months of difficult conversation before a leadership team can land on it together. But the principle that the language you use to describe how you compete has real consequences, that applies whether the shift is this simple or far more complex. Now, this is where the 4 stages framework becomes really important to understand. In stage 1, the tactical stage, most owners are doing everything themselves. They're scrappy, they're figuring it out. Survival and momentum are the goals. Price sensitivity makes sense here because you're still proving yourself. By the way, stage 1 doesn't mean small. Stage 1 just means that the leaders are spending most of their time on tactical things. That's how we define it. You can be dozens of people and still be in the tactical stage. Most of the companies I work with in the beginning are there. Stage 2, the strategic stage, is where things start to crystallize. You've built the team, you have some systems. As leaders, you're spending a lot less time on tactical things. Clients are coming back. You're no longer just surviving. You're starting to think about how you want to win. But here's the trap many stage 2 businesses fall into. They've grown, but they're still positioning like they're in stage 1. Maybe they should be positioning that way, but maybe they shouldn't still have the same strategic language, the same messaging, the same assumptions about who their ideal client is that they formed when they were fighting for every single piece of business that they could get early on. And the shift from stage 2 to stage 3, the scaling stage, often requires the leadership team to do something that's generally uncomfortable. They have to look at their own strategic theory and ask, is this still true? Is this who we are now? That's what this team did. And that one-word change, affordable to competitive, wasn't just a vocabulary preference. That was a stage 3 move. Now let's talk about the ripple effects, because this is where it gets real. When a company changes how they position themselves in the market, when they shift from we're the affordable option to we're the competitive high-value option, that shift doesn't stay contained to the marketing page. It touches everything. First, it changes the conversation with new prospects. If you've been leading with affordability, your sales conversations probably look a certain way. You're spending energy justifying your price. You're fielding a lot of questions about what's included, whether there's flexibility, whether you can match a competitor's number. You're selling from a position of defending your value. When you shift to a competitive positioning, you're no longer in that conversation. You're saying, here's what we do. Here's what it costs. And here's why clients who are a good fit don't leave. That's a fundamentally different sales conversation, and it attracts a different kind of client. Second, it changes who you're actually targeting. This team spent some of the time talking about who's in their tribe. That's the language we use. Who's the right fit client? And when you decide you're no longer trying to be the affordable option, they answer that question. The right fit client is no longer the business owner who needs to pinch pennies on professional services. It's the business owner who understands that what this firm does isn't a commodity. It's a strategic asset. The client who values customized care, and is willing to pay for it. That's a different tribe. And building your sales and marketing around finding those people, that's a stage 3 move. Third, and this is the one that's hardest to sit with, it forces you to think about who the clients you already have who no longer fit. Let me say that again because I don't want you to skip past it. When you make a strategic shift like this, you'll have clients in your current book of business who no longer align with where you're going. Maybe they came in because you were the affordable option. Maybe you've bent over backwards for them, accommodated special requests, held their rate when everyone else went up, built workarounds that your team has to maintain because that's what affordable and flexible companies do. And by the way, I would be hard-pressed to name a company that I've worked with that doesn't have those legacy clients, we call them. Now, some of those clients, when you start acting like a stage 3 company, they're going to push back. Some will leave. And here's the hard truth that this leadership team was starting to wrestle with. That might be okay. In fact, it might be necessary. One of the leaders on this team said something that stuck with me. They've been doing price increases 2 years in a row, which for them is new territory. And she said something to the effect of, I think some of that's okay. I'm okay with starting to lose some of them, and we can bring on others who can support it. That is stage 3 thinking. That is the courage it takes to say not every client who got us here is the right client for where we're going. And I want to be honest with you, that's not easy to say, especially when you know these clients personally, especially when you've had long relationships, especially when the person on the other end of the phone is a real human being who depends on your firm. By the way, part of this conversation involved looking at the retention rate over time, and it might have been too hot. This is part of that understanding as you transition stages. Sometimes we actually need our turnover of clients to be a little higher. So here's the question you have to ask. If you continue to carry a large group of clients who need you to be the affordable option, clients who can't absorb a price increase, who generate friction in your system, who expect a level of customization that doesn't scale, what does that do to your ability to serve your clients well? It degrades it every time. The weight of the wrong fit client always comes at the expense of the right fit clients. Your team's time, their energy, their capacity, it's finite. And when it's consumed managing high maintenance relationships with clients who've never really valued what you do, it comes out of the bandwidth you have for the clients who do. So what do you do with this? Here are a few thoughts. First, audit your strategic language. Pull out your mission statement, your strategic theory, your marketing position, whatever you have. Read it with fresh eyes. Does it describe where you were or where you're going? Is it language you wrote when you were fighting for survival, or language that reflects what you've actually become? Second, have an honest conversation about who's in your tribe, who's the ideal client, not who was the ideal client, but who is the ideal client now, given who you are and what you deliver. Be specific. Think about psychographics. How do they think, as well as demographics? What do they value? How do they make buying decisions? The more specific you are, the more clearly you can see who fits and who doesn't. Third, be willing to look at the mismatches. This is the uncomfortable part. Go through your client list or your customer base or your accounts and ask, if we were onboarding this person or this company today, would we take them? If the honest answer is no, that's a conversation that eventually needs to happen. Now, I'm not saying you call everyone up tomorrow or fire your bottom tier. It's just there's a right way to do this with care and proper timing and with a plan for managing this transition. But you can't manage a transition you won't acknowledge is necessary. And finally, trust the math of a waiting list. This team has a waiting list. They have more business coming in than they can currently take on. And here's what a waiting list tells you. You have the leverage to be more selective. When demand exceeds supply, you get to choose. When you're in scarcity mode, you take everyone. Know which situation you're in. Finally, I want to acknowledge not every company reading this or listening to this is in that position. If you don't have a waiting list, the conversation about letting clients go is harder. It requires more faith and more patience. But the principle still holds. Clarity about who you serve best is always worth working toward, even if you get there more gradually. So let me bring this back to where we started. One word: affordable to competitive. I chose this example because of its simplicity, but I want to be clear. Most strategic evolution isn't this clean. In a lot of companies, the shift isn't one word on a document. It's a harder conversation. It's a creeping sense that something about how you've been positioning yourself isn't quite right anymore. It's a nagging feeling that your best work isn't matching your best clients. It's a team that's exhausted in ways that don't fully make sense, given how much you've built. And working through that, naming it, getting alignment on it, making the shift, that can take real time and real courage. But the principle is the same, whether the answer is simple or complex. The language you use to describe how you compete matters. It shapes your team's behavior. It shapes who you attract. It shapes who you keep. And at some point in every growing company's life, that language has to grow up too. In this case, it was one word, and that word was actually a declaration. It was the leadership team saying, we know who we are now. We know what we deliver, and we're ready to position ourselves accordingly. That's not a marketing decision. That's a leadership decision. That's the kind of clarity that stage 3 growth requires. If you're somewhere in that stage 2 to stage 3 transition right now, if you're a little uncomfortable with where I was going in this episode, I want you to sit with that discomfort. Because that discomfort is often the signal that the conversation you need to be having is the one you've been avoiding. This work isn't always as simple as I've been saying, but it always starts somewhere. Thanks for listening to the Results on Purpose podcast. I'm Jeff Garrison. If this episode connected with something you're working through, I'd love to hear about it. And if you know a business owner who's navigating that stage 2 to stage 3 growth feeling, share this episode with them. That's exactly who it's for. We'll see you next time.